What is it that really keeps people stuck in therapy for years?
I had a traditional private practice for many years as a psychologist. I found that people get stuck into complaining and blaming, and they just keep retelling the stories, and it gets more anchored within them. And if you don't have a therapist that's really sharp on these kind of details, it continues week after week to tell these stories without strategies how to get them out. So the stories you keep repeating are very hypnotic about your life. And I feel that's what gets people stuck in their life.
I never dreamed that I would meet some of the people I have met along the way in doing this show. And it's because I have been making connections and networking. It is very interesting the way that one connection with one person can lead you to other connections with other people. This is a big part of how I get really great guests on my podcast. It's about networking and making connections and forming relationships. And that's why my partner, Renee V, and I have decided to put on an amazing day of networking and exposure to thought leaders in the personal and professional development industry. We're holding the Rich Thinking Conference September 6th in Philadelphia, PA. It's a whole day event that includes breakfast, lunch, and just unbelievable access to people who you never dreamed that you would be up close and personal with. You'd be able to talk to, connect, shake hands, get together, make plans, make connections with people who can help you to get where you want to go in life. This is the way it's done. It is no nonsense. It's a lot of people will just BS you and not give you the real deal about how they have gotten success in their lives. And I'm telling you, this is one of the things you need to do. You need to network. You need to get into the right rooms. You need to take the time, make the investment in networking events, live events, in person. It's amazing. It's the way to go. And we would love to see you in this room, give you a big hug, and let you know that you are doing something amazing for yourself. You can get more information by going to richthinking.org. We still have some seats available as of the publishing of this episode. And so get in there now because they're going fast. The date is coming up. All right, guys, take my word for it. I am no gatekeeper. I want everybody to win. And this is how you win, by getting in the right rooms. I've created that room for you, I'm not getting anything out of this other than the joy, the satisfaction, and to be quite honest, the connections I'm going to make by being there. It's crazy. We would love to see you there. You can get your tickets at richthinking.org or just contact me and I'll hook you up with the tickets. And now on to this great episode of Blessings. Hello again, my friends. Welcome back to Blessings, where we talk about the human condition and connect to the lessons and the blessings of life. It is going to get extra deep today. I have Dr. Mary Ann Mercer, who has been featured on Oprah, Today in New York, Cosmopolitan, and Vogue, among other huge media outlets, for powerful, transformative life solutions. She says it does not have to take years of therapy to change your life, and I agree. She is the author of Bouncing Back from Difficult Times, and she has co-authored many books, including the well-known Spontaneous Optimism. She is on a mission to help people access healing, self-improvement, love, and happiness through her teaching, speaking, and writing, and her podcast, Positive Life Answers. Welcome, Dr. Mary, to the show.
Thank you, Mitzi. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm happy to have you. And I'm so excited to get some answers to the questions that we all have within us. So here's a big one for you to start. What is it that really keeps people stuck in therapy for years?
I think I had a traditional private practice for many years as a psychologist. So what I'm going to say was okay, being on that other side of the chair. And I found that people get stuck into complaining and blaming, and they just keep retelling the stories, and it gets more anchored within them. And if you don't have a therapist that's really sharp on these kind of details, it continues week after week to tell these stories without strategies how to get them out. So the stories you keep repeating are very hypnotic about your life. And I feel that's what gets people stuck in their lives. One of the factors.
I love that you said that. Your stories that you continue to tell yourself become hypnotic. That's very
Absolutely.
powerful. And I would think that a lot of therapists get into the practice of wanting to keep their clients around.
It's true. It's true. I supervised intern at one of the major psychiatric hospitals in Illinois during those early times of my career. And I taught them better strategies, cognitive change to get people to a better place. And they were much more successful with their clients than those who did not. And
Yeah,
it's okay.
exactly.
I'm a
Well,
psychologist.
yeah, no, I think it's true, but I think it's a good point. And also, as a psychologist or any type of practitioner for personal change or growth, if you continue to have the same people coming back to you long term, and you can't continue to be fresh yourself with new people, new ideas, new ways of helping people to self actualize, then you yourself don't get an opportunity to self actualize. It stagnates everyone. It's
You're
not,
right.
doesn't benefit anyone to do that.
It doesn't.
It's
And
so
this is my
interesting.
mission to help people who can't get to therapy or can't afford it or whatever the reasons are, to help reach out to people to teach them effective ways they can make better improvements or changes in their life.
To provide the positive life answers.
Yeah, I'm on a mission to help people create the life they desire and get unstuck.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of us who are stuck who know we're stuck, and there are a lot more of us who are stuck who don't know we're stuck.
That's true. That's true. And I call that like a suffering mode. People are really stuck. And in recent times, people have had to confront their unhappiness. Before lockdown, for example, people were just in that mode, doing what they were doing, even if they were unhappy, because they can keep running. And the power of that pause, and I call it a powerful pause in our lives, made a lot of people face what they didn't want to for a long time. And that's why some people flourished after that. And that was my busiest time, doing Zoom meetings and helping people, because some people created the life they desired and some people just stayed stuck. But it's really important to reflect and pause.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up, because even people who were perhaps stuck in a rut of some sort, but were so comfortable there, even
Yeah.
those people were forced to no longer have that comfort zone. And so it either made them see that what they were doing wasn't working for them, or it just threw them completely for a loop, because now their one
Absolutely.
last straw that they had to grasp onto was gone.
Absolutely. And that's why you found these two groups.
Yeah.
And it just encouraged me to write Bouncing Back from Difficult Times. That's when I wrote it during lockdown because my clients were inspiring me. It was a book in the back of my head, but I just wasn't on the schedule, so to speak, until that
Mhm.
time. And resilience, adaptability, and optimism, things we can talk about today, are
Mhm.
all the key ingredients, and it could be learned. If you weren't born optimistic, you're not doomed the rest of your life. There are a lot of things you can do if you just know what their secrets and strategies are.
That's right. That's the whole book. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, is all about that, that
Yes.
you can actually change your mindset. But of course, you have to want to do it. You have to be aware that you're being held back by a fixed mindset.
Yeah, yeah. A lot
Interesting.
of people that come to me, they were fairly happy with their lives, but then they hit some milestones. They turned a big 3-0, or they lost a parent, and it got them to stop and feel that there's got to be more in my life. And that's when they start reaching out or looking for resources like this, because they
Hmm.
know they have to make some improvement. They're not happy totally like they thought they were.
Right. We can go along for a while, but eventually the universe will hit us over the head if we don't listen to the signals along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. They'll get your attention one way or the other, and it's better not to wait for a big crisis.
That's true. Oh my gosh. Yes. If we could only get people to listen before the big crisis moment, but
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
always happen that way.
And
Oh
that's
my
our
gosh.
goal
Wow.
in your podcast as well as mine.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So I do want to find out a little bit about you personally and
Okay.
how you got to be this beautiful human who wants to give and serve and help others, because that usually has something to do with our childhood, our upbringing, and our experiences, our early experiences in life. So I'm just going to ask you my favorite question, which is, can you go back in time and tell us about your very earliest memory?
Wow. And there's a lot. It's a four-step answer to that. And I call that story, my Victoria story. And it started off when I was a toddler, and my grandfather was watching me. And I went into the kitchen and walked over to the staircase and fell down the stairs and landed on the concrete floor of the basement. And that was like the first part of my journey because my parents took me to the doctor and they called me damaged. And then when I got into grammar school, I had trouble learning and I was put into the slow learning group. And this is where labels started becoming thrown at me. I was put in a slow learning group at that time in my life, because I'm a little older. That was the acceptable labels, but I felt humiliated and just drifted downward. And in high school, that continued my learning issues. So I started hanging around the cool kids, and the cool kids were troublemakers. And
Mhm.
one day, the school counselor called my parents and say, "She's troubled."
Mm.
And this went on until junior year. And then I met a teacher. Her name was Joy. It was such a beautiful name because it captured her spirit. Her name is Joy, and she asked to meet with her after school. And I thought, oh my God, what did I do? Am I in trouble again? And she had this beautiful grace about her that took time to get to know me and then worked into helping me learn and gave me strategies to learn and met with me all the time and then kept giving me excitement about learning. And I started flourishing. And at that point, I wanted to go to college. So I met with the school counselor there, and she looked at my records and my behavior. And she said, "No college is going to accept you, or university is going to accept you." And my heart sunk, and I left the office humiliated. And I kept looking for strategies, and I ended up going to college, and I ended up meeting mentors. And now my label is Dr. Mary Ann Victoria Mercer. It's like it was obstacle and challenges after another that I had this vision for my life, this passion. I felt a calling to help people from the high school age on. And the labels could have stopped me. I could have gotten into blaming and moaning and complaining. But this passion, this fire inside, just kept me dreaming. And then I was called a dreamer at that point, too. So, this is the story of my life and how it got me to where I'm going and where I am now, which is I want to help people who have labels. I want to have
Mhm.
people who have setbacks and what they can do to go through them. So, that is my story that I'd like to share.
Okay, that's really interesting. I love that you were able to go back into these experiences and tie these stories to the labels and then identify that those labels became belief systems, not
Mhm.
only in yourself, but also in those around you in your environment. So it was this double edged sword. And it finally took this beautiful teacher that you had, this one woman who sounds like an angel named Joy, to just come
Absolutely.
into your life and help you. Now, what do you have to say to people who don't have that person? Like they never had that positive influence come into their life. How do they extract themselves from the negative labels that they're carrying?
Great question. I felt so blessed that I had Joy, and then in college a mentor who also helped me there. And for those who don't have that, it's really time to dig deep and reassess what are the people in my life? Where can I find these people? And it's so easier these days. They didn't have podcasts back in my time. It's so easy to find something to listen to and see what can inspire you and follow those because you can join groups and just ease into. hooking up with some really important, positive people. And that's what I've been telling people who just come to see me. That's a good way to start.
Hmm. You can find people online. I
Absolutely.
totally agree. And I think it's interesting that you brought up the changes that happened in during the pandemic, because this is when my life really changed as
Yes.
well. And I found myself in a lot of shifting or ending relationships during that time. Even friendships I'd had for many years, I found no longer served me, and I was no longer aligned in those relationships. And it shook everything up, the whole pandemic. But what I learned was that I could find like-minded people who were on my new frequency, my
Yes.
post-pandemic frequency
Right.
online. And we shouldn't be afraid to reach out and meet people online. I think that whole era of being afraid of the people who are pretending to be someone else or people who are trying to scam you online, you can vet people, you can be discerning. And there are so many legitimate groups and places where you can join up to come together with people that are really empowering. So, how do you help people to decide what's a legitimate group? What's a good place that I can trust online to find my people?
I have my little referral systems too, but I want to go to what you talked about shedding these relationships. When you start shedding them, that opens the path and opens your mind to start finding them. I think it's more of an energetic feel that people can start attracting in life. When I was starting my podcast, and I think in your background too, as you became more successful, you notice some friends drift away. And I've had that experience in my life. The first time I was on Oprah, I called a friend of mine that was part of this group. And at first she was excited, but the second time I was on Oprah, it was a threat to her
Oh,
because her response was, "That's nice." And I'm like,
oh,
okay, not everybody's going to go with you. So as
yeah.
you open yourself up and you're making changes, some people are going to shed and make room for new people. And I think it's that pivotal point that then we can all direct people to find us or find people that are like-minded to us. And local
Yeah.
resources are important too, but that's the approach I've been taking about it.
I think that's great. And absolutely, it's totally an energetic alignment. And I know that when people are no longer in your life, it is because you're no longer aligned. And that's usually a positive thing, even though it can feel very hurtful in the moment. What you said about the idea of being on, you're on the freaking Oprah Winfrey show and somebody's not, that's amazing. Like your friends should be like jumping up and down. That's crazy. That's so
First, but
cool.
not the second time. That was just
Oh,
it brought out, I think what happens is brings out insecurities
yes.
in other people and that, oh, I could do that. I could do that better, but they never follow their dreams. And I want to help people follow their dreams or create them. Myself, Victoria, my alter ego, as I presented, I had a clear vision for my life. And I started to filter out all those negative labels. And I grew up in a very close knit Chicago neighborhood, and it was very difficult to break out of that. In fact, a lot of my grammar school buddies still live in that area. But the ones like myself who broke out of that, because it was a lack mentality, it was a
Mhm.
struggle, and so forth, a lot of people stay stuck there because that's all they know. And
Yes,
people
and
are
when
like,
you're
well, how did
successful,
you know?
yeah,
Like, I just felt that this burning flame in
right.
my heart. And people can find that if they haven't had that feeling themselves. I can help them and we can help them find their purpose in their lives. I help people find their purpose,
Mm.
what their vision is, and then the work they need to do to get there. It is about energetic vibrations that Victoria, myself, I could have just stopped when I was rejected from multiple colleges. But I started to go into problem solving mode. And that's what optimistic people do and resilient people. I found resources, I found ways to prove myself. So I went to a junior college and worked my little body off to get on the dean's list. And then when I got on the dean's list, the whole universe opened up. Any university would take me at that point. But
Hmm.
what if I didn't go into problem solving mode and just gave up? It takes a sense of persistence. When you find your passion, you find your way around these obstacles. The
Hmm.
problem solving is the key ingredient between pessimistic and optimistic people.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Yeah. People go into problem solving mode. Pessimistic people go in blaming everybody else.
Yeah, they do. They
And
do. And it's very hard for them to see that's what the root of their problems is.
yeah, it's an agony anchor that holds them back.
Yep,
Blaming and complaining. It just holds you back. It drains your batteries, your energy. How do you
sure
have
does.
any energy left to do what you want to do about your life?
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch. I've watched people in my life, in my own family, who attach to that identity of victim and blaming, and it's always the
Yes.
outside world, and they're fighting all the time. They're complaining, they're making posts about what's wrong in the world, and
Mm.
they just think that if that doesn't change, I can never be happy, and they're never happy. I watched them for years doing this.
Yeah, these drainers, I call them emotional
Yeah,
vampires, they're all around us. They can distract us. And we really have to filter through that. There's different types of vampires, but the ones that you're talking about are the drainers, and they also distract you. So I filter out in my life just how much I expose myself to negative news, negative people. And that's really
absolutely.
important to, keep yourself going.
It really is, because what in these negative people, the drainers, and what in the news and what on some parts of your social media, they're magnifying something to make it look like it's a bigger part of society than it really is. When you connect with actual human beings, like you were talking about, the finding the people online, finding your groups, finding your
Yes.
people, you realize there are many more people who are on that kind of optimistic side than it looks like if you focus on the drainers. So I love what you said about limiting that.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so good. Wow.
Think people
So,
they need to ask themselves, what do they really want in their life? What excites you? Some really quick, empowering questions like that to start with. I call them the magic questions. I think gets people going. So if the listeners would just pause and think about, what do you really want in your life? What do you desire, and why haven't you done it? And how would you feel if you didn't do it in 2 to 5 years from now? If they just start with that from today, I'd be so happy for them.
yes. Yes, it really makes a difference when you can connect to that, what you said, the burning desire. And that's at the heart of everything. But not everybody has that. They don't even think they not only do they not have a purpose, or they don't know how to access a purpose, they don't even think that they need one. How do you deal with that? How do you help people who maybe don't know they need help? Do
A
we?
lot of
Or do we
people
let them
come,
be?
I let them be. When they're ready, they come. And if they're not, I refer them up. If it's a roadblock that they really do need a little bit more psychotherapy to
Mm,
get unstuck for a few months, I'll do that because it's such a deeper type of issue. Because I'm really focused on taking people who are just feeling uneasy, unhappy, want to make some improvements in their life, and focus them on that. They just, when they're ready, they find me. It's that universal energetic thing. When the student is ready, they'll appear.
that's right. So you
Yeah.
like to work with people who already have a little bit of that spark, but they're not quite sure what
They're
to
not
do.
sure. Yeah, they're not sure where they want to go, what direction, how to figure it out. When the magic questions is a way to get started overall. Those are
Mm,
generic questions, but that helps them uncover just what direction. It gets really intensive with the questions and so forth. But that's why I started the podcast too, to help people who really can't come in yet or just starting to think about it, as long as they can start thinking about it when they hear some of the episodes on creating your life you desire, those are great ways to start. And I
hmm.
think that's both of our missions too.
Yeah, even if you can just think about one question that you can answer, and it doesn't even have to be answered right away, just to keep it in your mind, to plant seeds and then grow from there. And what I find too is when we hear other people talking about their stories, when we hear other people sharing their experiences, it makes us connect
Mhm.
to things in ourselves. And then that self-awareness is what helps people to get started on that journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to emphasize again, change doesn't have to be heavy lifting.
Mm,
A lot of therapists have made change heavy lifting. Our approaches, you and I, are empowering. And the questions we're talking about are empowering. And that's make That what's make people get more confident in that, okay, I'm in control. I can figure this out too with guidance. But
Yeah.
it's not that hard. You can only have one thought at a time in your mind. That's basic psychology research. And you can choose to be pessimistic and do the upsetting attitudes and words, or you can choose to be optimistic and upbeat. And it's a choice. I want to empower people to know it's a choice. You can do it. Or you
Mhm.
can be upset and complaining, or you can figure it out. There's
That's
lots of
right.
flipping. You can complain or go in problem solving.
Yeah.
You can
You
be
can, you
overwhelmed, or you can use strategies that will help you. It's
exactly.
that
It's
simple.
always a choice. And if you let things be easy, sometimes I will tell myself, let this feel good. Let this teach you something. And just using that phrase, let yourself be happy. Let yourself be loved. Let yourself be healthy. That can be the catalyst to taking the power back because it is really in your control,
It
all of
is.
these things.
Yes, and it's a good point you're bringing up. People have either what we call an internal locus of control or external. And the ones who have that external locus of control, meaning the world, the universe, politics, whatever it is, that rules their lives. For the people who look internally, they say, okay, this is what's going on around me. And I can adapt to that. I know I need to change. I can take control that way. They look at what they can control, not what's out of their control. And that's why, with bouncing back, people that are resilient and they were adaptable. It's, yes, this is upsetting, but what can I do in this period of time? They went into that resilient problem solving mode. And they were good role models for their kids. I noticed even in my family, the parents who really went into, okay, this is not going to last forever. This is not all gloom and doom. This is what we can do in the meantime to structure our lives and adapt and cope with this. Those children did so much better than the
Yeah,
parents who just stayed on the couch or felt really upset. Your children are watching. So it's
that's
really important.
true.
So wake
Yes,
up.
I know. It's so true. And it's our children, it's even other people are watching. And you can be an inspiration by modeling those healthy, positive behaviors just across the board. But yeah, especially as a parent.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. One thing I noticed about people finding this period of their lives where they are coming to grips with themselves, or they're struggling for their purpose, or they want to make a big change. A lot of times this happens a little bit later in life. I think it's a common thing. So,
Yeah.
what is it that causes us to crave some kind of a change or transformation later? And how can we access that, like the strength to do that?
Yeah, the first part of what you said is so true. A lot of people come to me, they're like 30, 40, and they're like, gosh, this is my life. Is this where I want to be? And where am I going? And it's a lot of anniversary reactions, birthday reactions that gets us out of that comfort zone to start thinking, oh, maybe I should pick up a book or listen to podcasts, whatever it is, to start getting direction. And it's a time for reevaluation. I remember when I turned 50, it was like, oh, wow, where am I going? How do I vision and picture the rest of my life? I do my goals, I do my vision board, but I just practice what I preach. I want to really look at, what do I imagine my life to be like? What do I want? It's really that easy to do with just those kind of thoughts about it. But I think that's why people in that age group and more just start to realize, hey, maybe half my life's over. I need to look at, what have I done? What's my destiny? What's my legacy?
I always think about the 3-column piece of paper, one with the three big questions: Who am I? Who have I been? And who do I want to be?
Yes.
And answering those questions, and then just reverse engineering the who do I want to be part.
Yeah,
You-
absolutely.
it's
And,
so
it's really, in terms of manifesting and creating your life, the first step is just to take that pause and reflect, see where you're at. Is this where you want to go? And take some strategies and steps to get there. It does require work. You have to take self-responsibility at that point to do the work. For example, I did the work. I could have given up and not go to college. I could have given up and not go to grad school. But I said to myself, do I want to stay in this area that I lived in that was such a struggling, suffering type of mode? Wonderful people. I had wonderful parents, but they had that lack mentality. They came here from Europe, first generation. They worked hard. They gave us a good life, loving life, but it was always a struggle. And I promised myself, I will never do struggling that way again. And I promised myself when I went to grad school and got my first good paying job, I would buy the Barbie dolls that my parents could not afford. And I did. And I have
the brand name Barbie, not the one that you got at the discount store.
Yeah, not the fakes, but the reproductions, or cried about it the rest of her life. I had a client who kept blaming her father. She's 50 years old. She kept blaming her father for being mean to her as to why she was a failure and you couldn't hold a job. But she stayed in that agony, anger, blame. And I had to really just, I guess you can call it confronting, but just be straight with her. And I say, I don't know, how old are you now? Who's in charge of your life? Is your father who passed in charge of your life, and really focus on what they're doing? And she was receptive to that. And she started making some shifts, and it took her a while because it was such an ingrained story in her life. But she let go of that agony anchor of blaming the parents, blaming whoever it is. And you can let it go, and you can forgive and work your way through that. Another topic, but
yeah, no, but it's so important. The idea of the generational connection to struggle and pain and trauma. And I think one of the most modern ideas that I connect to along those lines is that if you can heal yourself, you're actually healing your father. You're actually healing your mother, and even your grandparents, and even further back than that. By healing yourself, you heal all of that far back ancestral wounding. And if you're going to blame your father or your mother or whoever for your circumstances, then you have to also at the same time have compassion for them, because the reason why they were not able to be the best parent or the best whatever in your life is because they were hurting, probably from something in their own life. So
I love it.
Just take control of it. Heal. Yeah. But I think that's so powerful. And there's a lot of very interesting new research on the quantum mechanics model and epigenetics and that kind of stuff, which I'm such a geek for. And it's actually true. There's it's so interesting. Yeah. So
I love what you said, because I was just talking to somebody about that too, about healing yourself that heals others. And that's really important. And it can cause this beautiful, I call positive quantum effect on everyone in your life. And that landed with me when I was getting more into quantum healing and energy. And I wanted to be a good role model for my great nephews, because I'm a great aunt and I love that role, because I'm teaching them history, but also how I came out of that too. They have, in terms of their eyes, their great grandparents. I learned that my parents were loving and there was no abuse and things like that, which I'm grateful for. And they were loving. And I forgive them for their lack mentality. And I'm sure they would be smiling right now about where I'm in my life right now.
I'm sure. So many of us have that in our ancestry, the parents who had the lack mentality. And even if they weren't consciously trying to express it, but we all heard things from our parents like that. Like I can remember my mom, when she would give me money to go out on the weekend, she would pinch the bill between her fingers and she would have to dig into her purse and she'd be all upset. And yet she wanted to give me the money. And it was so funny because I got an allowance that I felt was so meager, because I had friends who just had whatever they wanted. They had as much money as they wanted. They didn't have to work. And I was always the one kind of scraping by. And my parents always reinforcing that you have to work really hard for what you want. And you can't have those right now. We have to save up for that. And we're not going to Disney World because we can't afford it. Things like that.
Yeah, I have a similar story as well. My father worked a job and a half, but basically two jobs to make ends meet. And my mom wasn't educated, bless her heart, but I remember as a kid going to the grocery store with her and being in line, and this is paying by cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So teller told her how much it was, and she did not have enough money. And
Mm-hmm.
the trauma and the just the compassion I had for her about what do you pick to return
Yeah.
so that you can afford to buy your groceries. And that was such a powerful memory that it just chokes me up to tell you. But it's
Mm.
because I have compassion for her
Yeah.
and I have compassion for them, and they did the best they can. And
Yeah.
that's what you have to tell yourself. They did the best they can with the resources they had and what they learned in their lives. And that's okay. Learn from it. Blame them.
Yeah,
It's
learn from
time.
it and take it and use it as
Yeah.
information rather than I always try to, and I can't always do it myself, but it's a good piece of advice to try to remove the emotion from the situation and to just
Yes.
take it as information. So
Oh,
then
I like that.
you can build on it. And every generation seems to take steps. So maybe your step will be a giant step and think of it that way.
Yeah, but just take a step. Take that first step.
That's
For
right.
those listening, if they can just take one little tip here today and get started and
Yeah.
continue that process, you can get your vision on and turn that on so you have your own inner radar. And that will lead you to what you really want to do and excite yourself for your life. Because if you don't have a good excitement and vision for your life, you don't have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And do you want to drag yourself around the rest of your life in that
Mm.
kind of mode? It's like sometimes when people have come into my office, they're really pessimistic, just their body posture, you can tell right when they walk in the door, they're hunched over, their heads down, their voices are down, and it just keeps hypnotizing the mind body connection. Their voices are slow. And if I said, "Oh, hi, Mitzi, how you doing today?" You know that I'm in trouble versus if like,
Yeah.
"Oh, wow, it's so amazing to meet you." That kind of thing, you can tell just in their body, but that mind-body connection is important. So sometimes I just have to tell people, "Okay, sit up straight and put your shoulders back," because before you can straighten out your mind, you gotta straighten out your body too. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just these little tricks, they really are 60 seconds. When you walk by a mirror, see if you're walking upright and straight or if you're hunched over and you're not breathing right. The empowerment of the body and mind, just as we know with all the research that you're aware of in mind, you can't ignore that any longer. And that's what I love about quantum healing, because it's like your body's a transducer. If you open yourself up, it comes in. If you close it with your posture on top of it, then you're stuck energetically.
Yes, your body is literally a torus field. You have this
Yes,
magnetic flow of energy that's going around and through your body at all times. And that's
yes,
connected to the earth, it's connected to other people, and it's real. We can measure the
it
magnetic
is.
energy from a person's body without even touching electrodes to the body. You can measure it on the outside scientifically.
Absolutely.
So it's so interesting to think about that we're emitting this and you can actually become a magnet to attract the people and circumstances into your life that you want. So I love that you
Yeah,
said
yeah.
about standing up, sitting up straight, putting your shoulders back, maybe even animating your voice, practicing recording
Yes.
yourself into a voice recorder on your phone just to practice. How can I make my voice sound like I'm confident? What would confident Mitzi sound like? And just play with that. And looking in
Yeah.
the mirror, doing mirror exercises is another great one. What other kinds of tips do you have for people to help to amplify that magnetic quality?
If you're saying that, I'm thinking the listeners are going to say, "Really, Dr. Mary?" And I'm going to say, "Yes, really." Because in the Harvard Medical Newsletter, there's study after study of people who were told to smile as part of an experiment actually felt better and they were able to tolerate pain more. I can go on to
Oh, yeah.
convince the listeners, but if you just listen to those two examples, there is concrete evidence that show yourself this. And if this is too woo, just think of yourself as a radio. Do you want to put it on the negative station or do you want to put it on the positive station? And that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
What are you listening to? What are you exposing yourself to? And we're like a radio receptor. You can
Yeah.
bring in all the negative, or you can bring in all the positives. And sometimes you have to let go of these emotional vampires. Our parents always taught us don't cut your cords, don't leave other people. But sometimes you have to cut the cord to some friends or
Yes.
relatives. They would always
Yes.
say, don't cut the cord, but sometimes you have to if they keep
Sometimes you
bringing you
do.
down.
Not everybody is meant to go along with you for the whole ride. Maybe
Yeah.
people are just meant to be there for part of it, and that's okay. But it is hard. I do think that's very hard, especially when it's someone close, a family member in
Oh, yeah.
particular. It's okay. It's the way of the world.
Okay. It's okay. And yes, it is hard, especially if it's a long-term friend or family member. Just think of it as that first step. Just limit how much time you spend with
Mhm.
them. Just take that little shift and you'll see a difference. You don't have to go into a long explanation. Just say, I'm tied up. I called a former old friend of mine a telephone terrorist because she would call every single morning after she had a bit of an issue. And at first, I was like, "Oh yeah, she's got a crisis. I'm going to be there for her." After about a month, this is not productive. So I had to cut that telephone cord or limit it because it was just she didn't want to make an improvement on the situation or move on. She wanted to stay stuck, and I wasn't going to stay there with her. And we eventually just stopped being friends. But sometimes you have to do that.
You do. But I
Yeah.
love the visualization of the telephone line being
Oh,
cut.
yeah. Good.
Such a great metaphor because that's the way it has to be sometimes. And that's
Yeah.
so true. That's so true.
Well, energetic cord too that we
Yeah,
have.
the
So
energetic
there.
cord. Yeah, there are I know some like ceremonies you can do, like the cord cutting ceremonies. You
Oh
can
yes, yes.
you can actually visualize it happening if you want. But the power of visualization, I just want to touch on that for a minute because what you're saying
Yes,
about the
please.
Harvard studies and there have been other studies where they've had a group of people who were actually playing the piano and practicing and actually lifting weights and practicing with their biceps and their arms. And then there was another group of people who were visualizing playing the piano and
Okay.
visualizing lifting the weights. And they actually found that the group visualizing was even more successful at those things at the end of the study than the people who had actually done it. And this is a technique
Absolutely.
that athletes use a lot, high performers use this a lot. So the idea of visualizing, it's actually a real effective technique. So what are
Yes.
some visualization exercises that people can do to increase confidence, to help them to reach goals? And when do you think it's a good time to do those types of exercises? I tend to do them at night
I was
before I
gonna
go to
say,
sleep, but I don't
yes.
know if that's the best time. So tell me about that.
It is a good time because your mind is more receptive and you're more relaxed, and you get into this alpha relaxed brainwave, and it quiets that ego, that part that
Mm,
wants to chat or talk at you. But for example, when I first became a speaker, I visualized myself speaking in front of a group, and I specifically visualize a smile on my face. I visualize the audience members smiling and looking enthused and clapping. And I rehearsed that in my mind over and over again until I started getting speeches and workshops. So that mental rehearsal. That's why some people called me a dreamer because of that. But I was rehearsing, I was visualizing. But you have to visualize with a heightened sense of emotion. So you have to be excited about it because if you just visualize it, you're missing that key secondary ingredients that anchors it in you. So it's got to be, and I think Joe Dispenza talks about this, a clear intention with a positive emotion.
yep.
Put that together, do it in the evening like you're talking about, where your mind is getting quieter and more receptive, and then go to sleep right after that.
Yes, I love
And
that.
that's
And
did the trick for me and for my clients. And when I was in grad school and still overcoming some learning issues, I would read my notes right before going to bed because that's when my brain was the most receptive. So I hope that answers your question.
yes, it does. I think that's amazing. And I love that you reinforce that the time before sleep is such an effective time to do that. I know some
Absolutely.
people, Joe Dispenza for sure, Dr. Bruce Lipton is another one who talks about this. And then even some people who are more towards the like manifestation abundance kind of thing, like Napoleon Hill
Oh,
talked
yes.
about
Yes.
this in his
Yeah.
books and he interviewed so many top successful people. So it's information that's out there, the combination of the elevated emotion with the positive intention. And then also the burning desire that comes into play.
Yes.
Got to have the
Yeah.
desire. I
And
love
those
that
are
so
the
much.
key ingredients.
Yep.
If people remember anything else, just remember the key ingredients is the vision, the passion, the burning desire, the clear visuals, and the elevated emotions. And I guarantee you, magic will happen in your
Magic
life
will
at that point,
happen. It
right?
does. It really works. It really works. Oh my goodness. Wow. I feel like time has flown here. We've gone through
I
so
know.
much.
Oh my gosh. It
Time
has.
is just flying. I love it.
I know. There's so
Oh
much
my
more to
goodness.
say. Definitely.
Wow. All right. So I want to know a little bit about what you think about kindness and how we can be more kind to one another. How does kindness lift us up as well as the people we are being kind to? And how can we be more kind as a society?
It's a beautiful question. That taps into the area of what I call grace. And grace is that kindness I talked about in my optimism speech. One of the tips is grace. And what grace is just taking the time to connect with people by saying simple things to them, saying thank you. For example,
Mm,
my husband and I went on an Alaskan cruise, and we had this one waiter, specifically in the morning, and every time he brought us coffee or whatever, we'd look at him, smile, and say thank you. We didn't think that's not a big deal, right? At the end of the cruise, he came up to us. He says, "You know what? You made me feel so good. You're the only people who said thank you and made me feel like I was doing a wonderful job." And that he had tears in his eyes.
oh,
How many people don't do that? It's a
yeah.
simple act of grace that really shows passion, compassion toward another person, and that lifts their spirit. He was just smiling all day when we saw him later at
Oh
lunch.
my gosh.
So just doing a little simple steps of giving a compliment to a person, taking a moment. It doesn't take what 15 seconds to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Mm-hmm.
excuse in our fast-paced lives anymore to do that. So do some compliments. Look people in the eye and acknowledge them. My husband and I gave a workshop together with a group of executives, and they didn't even think about when they walk down the hallway to give eye contact to their
Right.
managers. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to give eye contact and say hello. Simple little acts of that is grace. And that makes you feel good because you can see the effect on the other person. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a real important key.
That's beautiful. It made me think about when you were talking about the waiter, I had a vision of a person checking me out at the grocery store and putting the groceries in the bag.
Yeah.
And I have to think to myself, do I say thank you every time when they do that? How many people go through a checkout line and never say thank you because it's the person's quote job to do that? Like the
Yes.
waiter, it's
Oh
his
my gosh.
job. And it's,
Yes.
isn't that interesting? Because it's just,
Yeah, it brought up a story from my husband. He always thanks the clerks, the baggers,
yep.
and he's the one that does the shopping. I do the cooking, so we divide and conquer, right?
Oh,
But he loves doing it. I went with him one night to the store, and all these women were saying hello to him. I'm like, "Are these all your girlfriends or something?" He said, "No, I'm nice to them. I
yeah.
thank them." And you can see that when he walked in, if they were like frowning, they smiled and say, "Oh, hi, Dr. Mike." Hi,
Yeah.
Dr. Mike. It, a positive domino effect in this world starts happening if we just do these little 15-second little things,
Yep.
these little strategies. It can really make changes in your life for yourself, for others, and then hopefully for the rest of the world.
Oh,
It's not hard.
no,
Come on,
it's not
everyone.
hard.
Do
Why do we
it.
make it so hard? It's
Yeah,
really
maybe I
not.
think people just need that final thought as giving them permission that it's easy to do. It's not going to be a lot of heavy lifting. Just do it. Just do
Just
it,
do
and
it.
you'll benefit from it as well.
That's
If
right. It's
that
a win.
convinced you. Yes,
Kindness is a win. So, what would you
absolutely.
say are the biggest lessons you've learned in your life?
One of them is faith. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, that quote from the Bible is really important. As a matter of fact, a friend gave me this little round coin. In the middle of it is a little bubble, and in that is a mustard seed. It's teeny, teeny, tiny. So if you have faith in these strategies from the examples of our lives together here and start your faith in that, that carries you through if your self-esteem isn't quite up there. But have faith. These things work. The universe, God, whoever your creator is there for you. But if you have faith in that invisible energy, I think that helps a lot. And that's helped me a lot. I could have lost faith many times along the way through grammar school, high school, but I just felt something. And I think that's what it was at that point. It was faith that there's got to be something better out there for me.
And what about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of your life?
I get tearful when you ask that. My mentors, starting with Joy as a teacher. Next, Dr. Stan Martindale in college, I was his research assistant. Changed my life. Anybody who worked with him became super duper successful. And I can give you all these examples. And then in my spiritual part of my journey in more recent years, Dr. Carl Wolf, and he taught me how to move through resistance in the body and taught me how to do movement therapy. So what I do a group that we work through this bodily mind-body connection strategies and show people how to move in a new way, which helps them open up their whole lives. So my blessings are my mentors, and my blessings are my family, my great nephews, my husband. And there's a lot more, but I just think those are the most important things.
Yeah.
Loving connections I've experienced.
Loving connections. This has been a loving connection. Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. I loved talking with you. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it's been wonderful. And I'm sure your listeners will find some good points and strategies that will make shifts in your lives. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from them.
That's right. And where's the best place for people to connect with you?
My website, positivelifeanswers.com. My podcast is just called Positive Life Answers. So either way, you can hook up on those two different platforms, and my email's there. So I'll be waiting to hear too from everyone.
Beautiful. Thanks again.
Thank you. Keep up the great work you're doing with your message.